When a man realizes he's in love, something changes. But what he doesn't realize is that, at that exact moment, something also changes inside her. And it's not just emotion, it's not just doubt, it's strategy, instinct, protection. Every woman, consciously or not, activates a kind of psychological game when she realizes he's surrendering. It's not malice, it's not manipulation, it's emotional survival. And most men don't realize this until it's too late. What you're about to understand isn't simple curiosity about female behavior. It's the key that explains why she changes the tone of the conversation, why she disappears without explanation, why she tests your reactions, why she observes every detail of your behavior when you show more interest. Maybe you've already experienced this and thought she was provoking you. Maybe you thought she was confused. But no, she was actually silently evaluating you. The beginning of this process happens in seconds. She notices a deeper look, a more affectionate message, a more attentive gesture, and instantly, something inside her awakens. He's falling in love. And when this awareness arises, she goes into analysis mode. Not because she wants to play with you, but because she needs to know, are you really secure? Or will it just be another emotional loss? The psychological game doesn't start with attitude. It starts with silence. She changes the rhythm, alters the intensity, observes how you react to small variations. If you bring up more conversation, she slows down. If you offer too much, she retreats. If you show signs of emotional dependence, she shuts down. If you remain centered, she opens up. And all this happens subtly, almost invisibly, but extremely calculated by the female emotional mind. The most curious thing is that this game has no external rules. It happens inside her. It's a dance that she herself conducts as she perceives who you really are. And in this first chapter, you need to understand a hard, yet liberating truth. When you fall in love, she feels it before you admit it. And that's exactly when she starts testing your emotional stability. And why does this happen? Because for a woman, a man in love can be a blessing or a threat. If he is emotionally mature, she feels secure. If he is insecure, anxious, or desperate, she pulls away. She tests not to bring you down, but to see if you can handle the impact of her own vulnerability. And before we move on to the next chapters where I will reveal each layer of this psychological game, let me ask you something simple. Don't move on to the end without hearing everything. Each part of this script shows you a different piece of the puzzle. And if you skip any, you will miss exactly what you most needed to understand. Get ready. Starting in the next chapter, you will discover how this game begins within her long before you realize you've already entered it. In the previous chapter, you understood the starting point, the exact moment she realizes you are falling in love. Now, we need to delve into what happens inside the female mind before any test appears, before any perceptible change. There is a hidden, silent, strategic phase, and most men never realize they are being observed. As soon as she identifies your signs of interest, she enters a psychological state that we can call intuitive evaluation. It's different from rationalizing. It's not that she feels it and then thinks, I'm going to analyze this. No, everything happens on an emotional level. She starts noticing your posture, your energy, the intention behind your words. She observes how you react when she takes a while to respond. She notices if your emotions fluctuate too quickly. She observes if you try to impress her or if you maintain your essence. This phase is so profound that, often, she herself wouldn't realize it or explain it rationally. But she feels it. And this feeling is the compass that defines everything that will come after. And here's an important point. Women don't observe with their eyes, they observe with emotional perception. She senses your insecurities even before you show them. She perceives your anxiety before you admit it. She perceives your fear of losing even before you send that long message you shouldn't have sent. This first phase is crucial because it will determine whether she will open doors or start the psychological game. If she feels balance, confidence, and stability in you, she tends to surrender more easily. But if she detects anxiety, neediness, or emotional instability, she feels she needs to test you to make sure she's not running an emotional risk. And make no mistake, that risk is real. For her, loving isn't just liking, it's about making yourself vulnerable. It's about opening yourself up to being hurt again. It's about trusting that your emotions won't be wasted. And when she realizes you're falling in love, it's not just your heart that's exposed. Hers is too. And that's precisely why she observes you before anything else. Another powerful detail: women don't observe what you say. They observe who you are when no one is looking. Your behavior when she distances herself a little. Your attitude when she's less available. Your energy when she doesn't validate you immediately. That's when she measures how much your love is security or dependence. And gradually, without saying a word, she begins to measure your consistency. Because for her, it's not enough for you to be in love. She needs to feel that you are a man capable of sustaining what she feels without crumbling, without demanding attention every second, without becoming desperate when your energy gets lower. And this silent and almost imperceptible phase is exactly what separates the men who win her trust from those who lose everything without understanding why. In the next chapter, you'll understand how this silent observation gives way to the first small, subtle, but extremely revealing tests. And this is where most men fail. After the silent observation phase, described in the previous chapter, an even more decisive stage begins, the moment when she starts the first tests. These tests are not dramatic, they are not obvious, and in many cases, she doesn't even consciously realize she's doing them. But the truth is that each one is a way of measuring whether you are emotionally solid or emotionally fragile. And it is precisely in these initial tests that most men reveal everything: poorly managed vulnerability, disguised anxiety, need for approval, fear of losing. The problem is not feeling all of this. The problem is demonstrating it in a way that breaks the security she seeks in a man. The first test usually comes in the form of slight distancing. She responds a little slower. It takes her a few minutes longer than usual to send a message. You feel that something is different, but you can't identify exactly what. This calculated silence, which is not always intentional, is one of the most powerful tests, not because of the distancing itself, but because of what it reveals about you. She wants to see how you react when the emotional flow isn't entirely in your hands. If you panic, speed up the pace, start sending sequential messages, wonder if you did something wrong, or try to compensate with more attention than she asked for, all of this detracts from your emotional image. But if you remain stable, calm, and centered, she senses that you are grounded, and that's a great psychological attraction. The second test appears as subtle little provocations. A phrase said with slight irony, a comment about another man, a joke questioning your self-confidence, something that slightly challenges your ego. It's not to humiliate you. It's to understand if you're guided by emotions or self-control. If you react in an exaggerated, defensive, or insecure way, she registers this as a sign of emotional immaturity. But if you respond lightly, with humor, naturally, she realizes that you are not easily shaken. The third test is usually a fluctuation in attention. One day, she is more present, the next more distant. Today she seems affectionate, tomorrow she seems colder. She does this to see if you adapt, if you complain, if you maintain consistency, or if you lose your balance. Emotionally strong men understand that variations are part of the female emotional cycle. Insecure men interpret any fluctuation as rejection, and this becomes the beginning of the end. These initial tests are more important than you imagine, because this is where she begins to realize whether you will withstand the following phases of the psychological game, or whether you will crumble before the relationship even truly begins. And if you know how to get through this stage, her next moves will be completely different. In the next chapter, we will delve into the most complex layer of these tests, those that not only measure your behavior, but also reveal your inner vulnerabilities. After the invisible and seemingly harmless tests, comes the moment when she begins to touch exactly where it hurts. It's not malice. It's not conscious manipulation. In fact, it's an instinctive search. Where does this man break? The answer to this question determines whether she will approach or distance herself, even if she still loves you or is deeply involved. This is the central test, the heart of the psychological game. It doesn't happen on the first date, nor in the first week. It emerges when she realizes you're invested. That's when she observes whether your feelings for her strengthen you or weaken you. The first sign of this phase is the test of emotional contradiction. She shows you affection and, the next day, seems colder. She compliments you and, a few hours later, makes a comment that makes you insecure. She calls you unique and, the next moment, acts as if you were just another one. This alternation isn't random. She's observing how you react when validation isn't constant. Men who crumble under this pressure reveal neediness. Men who remain stable reveal emotional strength. The difference between the two is significant, and she senses it. Next comes the internal response test, which is much deeper than anything she's done so far. Here, she does something that touches a wound in you. Something about your self-esteem, an old insecurity, a fear you've never admitted even to yourself. She subtly mentions your past. She makes a comment that touches on a vulnerability of yours. Or she simply creates a situation where you feel you might lose something important. This test serves one purpose: to see if your interest in her compromises your self-image. A man who changes who he is so as not to disappoint her is saying, without realizing it, that she has more emotional value than he does. And no woman wants to carry that weight. That's why she tests you, not to destroy you, but to see if you can handle the impact. The third aspect of this phase is the emotional control test. She wants to know if you know how to regulate yourself. No matter how strong your chemistry is with her, if you lose your temper, raise your voice, show irrational jealousy, or try to control the situation, she interprets all of that as a red alert. But if, even under pressure, you remain clear, take a deep breath, speak calmly, and don't try to win the argument, she feels something rare: emotional security. The most important thing here is to understand that she's not looking for perfection. She's looking for internal consistency. She wants to see if you're the kind of man who remains himself even when he's in love. Most men change, become more anxious, more available, more permissive. And it's precisely this change that makes her lose respect, desire, and even love. This is the core of the game. She tests to see if love strengthens or weakens you. And how you respond determines everything that comes after, including whether she will truly surrender or start to distance herself. What really destroys attraction is not failing the test. It's reacting to the test like a man who has lost his inner balance. This is the silent mistake, the most common mistake, the fatal mistake. The mistake that makes a woman look at a man in love and feel that something inside her has simply gone out. This mistake has many names, but they all lead to the same point: self-betrayal. It's when you start negotiating who you are to maintain what she feels. The most tragic part? You don't even realize you're doing it. Because in your mind, you're showing that you value her, trying to be better, wanting to get it right. But in her mind, every attempt you make to fix the mood, ease the tension, avoid conflict, please, explain, or justify yourself is read as emotional weakness. And here's the painful part. She can't respect a man who bows down to his own fear of losing her. The mistake starts small. She tests you with a comment. You feel discomfort, and instead of maintaining your emotional composure, you try to win back what she took away. She distances herself. You approach. She becomes cold. You become warmer. She questions something about you. You rush to prove that you're not like that. She says, I don't know if I want this. You respond, what can I do to improve? And without realizing it, you put yourself in an inferior position, exactly the position that makes her attraction evaporate. This mistake breaks the natural dynamic. The woman stops feeling that she is facing a man capable of emotional leadership, and she begins to feel that she is facing someone she now unconsciously needs to hold back so as not to hurt. No woman wants this role. No woman wants to be the owner of a man's emotions. No woman wants to be with someone who falls apart at the possibility of losing her. The fatal mistake is simple. You start behaving as if her love were oxygen, and her instinct reacts immediately. Because for a woman, love isn't oxygen, it's a choice. And she wants a man who also chooses, not a man who begs. The worst part? When you make that mistake, she doesn't warn you. She doesn't say you're getting weak, you're insecure, you're losing yourself. She simply feels it. And when a woman feels it, the decision happens before she can even explain it. But there is a way out. There's a way back. There's a way to break this cycle before it's too late. It all starts when you understand that answering the test isn't about pleasing. It's about sustaining your emotional identity even when you're vulnerable. This is where many men fall. This is where few rise. And this is where the game changes completely. Most men believe that the right way to deal with women's tests is to respond with calculated strength, coldness, or indifference. But that's not emotional control. That's just a mask. And the mask, sooner or later, falls. The invisible key to passing her tests isn't mastering the situation. It's mastering your internal reaction. When a woman tests a man in love, she's not asking if he's perfect. She's asking if he's stable. Stable in the face of doubt. Stable in the face of tension. Stable in the face of his own fear of losing her. That's the secret almost no one understands. She tests emotions, not actions. You can respond with the right phrase. But if your emotions are begging for validation, she feels it. You can act calmly. But if inside you're desperate for acceptance, she feels it. And when she feels it, she loses. She loses respect. She loses attraction. She loses confidence in her inner strength. The invisible key isn't in what you say. It's in what you don't abandon within yourself. It's the ability to look at her, even in the face of an uncomfortable test, and keep your emotional core intact. Without exaggeration, without aggression, without defensiveness, just presence. A man who maintains his presence automatically creates emotional security, and emotional security is the strongest foundation of female attraction. But how does this work in practice? Imagine she says something like, I don't know if you're really the kind of guy I should be with. Most men panic and try to fix the sentence. They explain, justify, promise, mold themselves. The man who understands the invisible game does the opposite. He feels the emotional impact of the sentence because he is human, but he doesn't bow down before it. He doesn't shrink. He doesn't rush to prove anything. He simply maintains his emotional identity and responds with something that comes from his inner strength, not from fear. That's okay. I know who I am. And then something almost magical happens. She relaxes because she realizes that the test found maturity, not despair. It found emotional balance, not instability. She found a man, not a boy trying to be accepted. That's the invisible key. Not reacting to protect the relationship, but reacting to protect your integrity. A woman only trusts and surrenders to the man who can remain whole even when she causes cracks. And here's the deeper truth. She doesn't test to bring you down. She tests to see if she can feel safe following you. If you fail, she loses her footing. If you stand firm, she finds direction. And it's precisely when you understand this mechanism that the game changes. Because you stop fighting the tests and start using them as windows to show consistency. Most men believe that women's tests are power games. They aren't. They are, in fact, instinctive mechanisms, automatic emotional responses that arise when she starts to feel something for you. But there's a secret that almost no one realizes. The real impact of the test isn't in the test, but in her reaction after you respond. It's in that silent, invisible interval that the fate of the relationship changes completely. Because when you pass the test, something profound ignites within her mind. And when you fail, something is extinguished forever. Let's start with the bright side. When you pass the test by maintaining your center, your emotional integrity, and your presence, her mind does something instantaneous. She relaxes. It's a relaxation that doesn't happen in the body. It happens in the unconscious. It's as if a primal part of her says, I can trust this man. He won't break under pressure. He doesn't depend on my approval to exist. This feeling, for a woman, is precious. It's rare, and it's extremely attractive. When you pass the test, she looks at you differently. Not obviously, not openly, but something changes in the way she sees you. You become more solid, more masculine, more secure, more rare. And all this happens without a word. That's the bright side. But there's the other side, the side almost no man wants to face. When you fail the test, she doesn't punish you. She doesn't humiliate you. She doesn't confront you. She does something much more subtle and much more devastating. She begins to disconnect emotionally. It's almost imperceptible at first. She laughs a little less. She becomes slightly colder. She disagrees more easily. She analyzes more. She doubts more. It's not revenge. It's not manipulation. It's simply her instinct responding to something she couldn't find in you. Emotional strength. But here's the most important and most dangerous part. When you fail once, she feels insecure. When you fail a few times, she feels uncertain. When you fail systematically, she feels devalued. And devaluation is the door that leads to the end of attraction. Not because she doesn't love you, not because she doesn't want you, but because, in her mind, something essential that sustained the connection broke. The sense that you can be that man for her. And when that sense breaks, she slowly begins to distance herself. First emotionally, then physically, and finally silently in the way she looks at you. That's how many relationships end without explanation. It wasn't a big fight. It wasn't betrayal. It wasn't one event. It was the sum of small failed tests. But there's a final stage of this psychological mechanism. And this is where everything is decided. It's when she realizes that you are truly in love. It is in this game of silence that most men get lost. Because when you distance yourself, two voices emerge within her. The voice of female curiosity, why did he disappear? And the voice of ego, did I lose control of the situation? And when those two voices start talking, something powerful happens. She begins to see you with new eyes. Every detail about you gains importance. Every absence of yours becomes a sign that she tries to decipher. Every gesture that once seemed common begins to gain emotional weight. The most curious thing is that the more confident you remain, the more intrigued she becomes. She expected you to chase after her. She expected you to insist. She expected you to give in. But you didn't give in, and that changes everything. Because when a man demonstrates that he has control over his own emotions, a woman realizes that she is dealing with someone different. And that's precisely where the game changes. She begins to feel a mixture of longing and restlessness. She doesn't fully understand, but she feels it. She misses your attention, your energy, the way you looked at her. And without realizing it, she begins to search for you mentally. And here is the most important point. When you stop being predictable, you become unforgettable. Because predictability is tiring. Mystery, on the other hand, is magnetizing. And it is in this contrast between what she thought you would do and what you actually do that the true emotional impact is born. This is what makes her rethink her behavior. This is what makes her remember you at random moments of the day. This is what makes her wonder what you are doing, who you are with, and especially if you still think about her. Some women, at this stage, become more affectionate. Others become colder. Some start responding faster. Others deliberately delay. Not because they have lost interest, but because they're trying to understand their own hearts. They're trying to measure how much you matter. They're trying to find out if they can regain control of the situation. But deep down, each of her reactions is a sign that the game has ceased to be just psychological. Now it is touching real emotions. And this is where many men go wrong. They try to break the silence too early. They try to show interest. They try to make her notice that you care. But when you break the silence too soon, you lose the impact you were building. Strategic silence is not absence. It is intensified presence. He makes her consciously miss him. He allows her to realize his worth without you having to say anything. And most importantly, he makes her come into contact with something she always tries to avoid, the feeling that she might be losing someone important. And that feeling, for a woman, is transformative. Because when she realizes that she might lose you not because you're playing games, but because you're emotionally mature, a silent admiration is born within her. A respect that she doesn't confess, but feels. And sooner or later, she reacts. She texts. She starts a conversation. She reappears with some excuse. And each of her attempts to get closer is a confirmation that the game is no longer hers and has become yours. When she finally feels the control slipping from her fingers, something changes in her gaze, her posture, the way she talks to you. It's as if the psychological game that began back then, that emotional test, that silent reading of your intentions loses its meaning. Not because she gave up, but because she realized that nothing she did managed to unsettle you. And that, for any woman, is much more powerful than any momentary emotional victory. It is at this point that a truth emerges that she never admits, but always feels. The man who does not bend to female pressure is the man she truly respects. Not because you were cold, not because you were indifferent, but because you didn't lose yourself trying to prove something. You simply maintained your value, your calm, and your identity. And that completely transforms the dynamic. She begins to look at you as someone who could choose, and yet chooses her. And this perception changes everything. Because when a man demonstrates that he is not desperate for love, but open to experiencing something real, the woman stops playing games and begins to feel. There are no more tests. There are no more provocations. There are no more attempts to measure her importance. Now, there's only one question she's trying to answer within herself. Is he still available? Did I let this slip away too far? And it's precisely here that she does something she didn't do at the beginning. She opens her heart, albeit silently. She starts responding to you more lightly, with more presence. She begins to show care in the details, in her tone of voice, in her writing style, in the way she tries to get closer. It's no longer strategy, no longer a game, no longer a test. It's pure, raw, true feeling, and perhaps even a little frightening to herself. The most interesting thing is that this moment isn't marked by big words or dramatic declarations. It's usually something simple, a message that seems casual but is laden with longing, a shy invitation to see you, a question she didn't need to ask but asks just to start a conversation. These are small gestures that reveal that something inside her has finally given up resisting. And that's where the whole truth appears. She realizes that you touched something that no game could control. You touched her emotions, her intimacy, the part of her that doesn't negotiate. When that happens, the psychological game simply ceases to exist. It's as if the mask falls because it no longer makes sense to keep it on. She doesn't want to beat you. She wants to experience you. She wants to know if there's room in your life for a story that isn't manipulated by the fear of surrendering. And it's at this point that you discover something that many men never realize. A woman only stops playing games when she finds a man who isn't competing with her, but walking alongside her. And here's the biggest turning point of all. Now, she's no longer the one who decides the direction. It's you. Not because of power, not because of control, but because it was your emotional maturity that broke the cycle. It was your calmness that dismantled the game. It was your ability not to react to the chaos that showed her that there is indeed a type of man who doesn't get lost in love, and who, precisely for that reason, is capable of truly experiencing it. And when a woman realizes this, she stops playing games and starts choosing. And this time, if the choice is yours, it won't be out of vanity, nor testing, nor ego. It will be for something much rarer, admiration. Before moving on, take a moment to breathe. If this video opened your eyes and made you see something that no one has ever explained to you, then don't let this knowledge die here. Hit the subscribe button, because the next piece of content might be exactly what will transform the way you understand women and the way you understand yourself. And more, leave a comment with a word that summarizes what you felt listening to this video. Your participation not only strengthens the channel, but also shows that you are part of this group of men who have decided to truly evolve. If you've made it this far, you're already above average. Now it's time to go further.